Um, so I think when you're inviting people to this particular meeting, it's going to be more beneficial if you can have that, here's where we started, here's where we are, here's why we need you at the table conversation in a quick email. It could be a text message, it could be a phone call, however you communicate with that particular person. I think you get a better outcome at the meeting when you do that.
That is a wonderful suggestion. We actually do have a week long of that activity that will take place in preparation for not just, the host is definitely our primary target, but the call will be available for those who want to ask questions. And especially if we're really ahead of the game on this, and as people are just signing up locally or whatever else, we'll be reaching out. Sarah's been great about sending out materials and beforehand to kind of prepare people from that standpoint. Yeah. And we have discussed about other processes as we're asking people to join in on other operational activities as well. So stay tuned to that for those updates from Sarah as well. And we'll just we will over communicate, and we apologize in advance to the piece, but we think it's very important for everybody to understand exactly where we're at, even including this meeting here, as we're kind of just getting through the summer and kind of preparing for the next several months, which is going to be it's going to go by very quickly. So.
Yeah. And I don't know, Sarah, are people going to be able to RSVP to like data bank like we did for the? Would attendees be able to sign up through?
Yeah, we can. So we can create a system. Right now, we have a sign up for hosts, and once we get hosts signed up, then we'll be able to have a calendar of events on the website where people can go and look and see that this is the location, this is the time, the date, and we'll have a system there so they'll be able to sign up as well if they want to RSVP for the meeting itself. And I would say that, the system is great, but if there are people that just end up coming, that's even better. So.
Yeah, I was just thinking if we had rosters ahead of time, yep. That local hosts, if they know people, could yep. Talk to the people they know, and or email from yourselves. But we could also send out emails from the team and say, hey, thanks for coming or planning to come, and here's a little heads up about it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, and one thing you'll notice kind of, moving forward a little bit in our agenda here today is at the bottom of the template, there's sort of a little message talking about kind of moving past the community meetings. Would your group or people in your community be interested in forming a local organizing network? And that is kind of that's not down the road, but it's past 2018 in the fact that
it's a little prelude to some potential local organizing.
Yeah, because what really from this movement and effort, what we really want is, the power is in having all these networks across the state that are coming to consensus on what really needs to happen in Minnesota to move equity forward as the growth model. So that's something where we'll make sure with hosts, we'll give you some more information on that before the meeting itself, so if people have questions. But one thing about the community meetings and even the process in of itself is, while we're here kind of providing some structure, that little bit of push, we want Minnesotans and people who are involved in the process to be leading it as well. It's something that it's a organizing collective effort. So, Lewis.
We talked in that vein, and we talked earlier about people coming into a process.
Oh, hold on a second.
Coming into a process that started a few months ago, back in June in Granite Falls. People are coming in now, sort of at the middle. I'm wondering, and I really am thinking out loud, if we want to add something on to the template that says, if we missed something, is there a step that you'd like to
not middle, and
Right,
that we all need
right.
to start thinking that way.
Yeah.
But our statement would help us to
Mhm.
do that,
Yeah,
to really say.
yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, so I've been talking about this since going, got my little mountain book going, because I'm particularly distressed that southeastern Minnesota is not, right, not engaged in a lot of the different parts that we're already moving. And so I want to make sure that we stay engaged. And one of the things that has really resonated with people as I've talked about it is the idea that the blueprint has a couple of components: policy, agenda, and socioeconomic contract. That seems to really help people understand what we're talking about. So
Great.
I just wanted to throw that out, that people seem to respond to that.
Okay, thank you.
Said
Socioeconomic contract.
That, and it came up at the, we discussed it in June. I wrote it down on my stuff in June, and it was spoken there, but that, when I said that going forward, people really said,
Yeah.
oh, okay, now
Yeah,
it makes sense. Kind of blueprint for what?
Right, and I mean, it goes back to, way back to 30 years when the last social contract was pretty much built by a couple folks in the legislature and philanthropy and others to create the initiative foundations and, different ways to both engage and react to the recession then and the farm crisis then. And as far as those of us who've been around since then can say, we haven't had that kind of in-depth, comprehensive rural-urban dialogue and contracts since then, and that's been certainly an inspiration of mine. But I think more people are seeing that that's part of what we want to try to do with this. That there are recommendations, and then there's also this commitment to each other. So,
I think someone on the phone was trying to get
yeah,
in.
somebody
Yes.
else. Thank you.
Yes.
Whoever was trying to reach us, go ahead. Sorry. Somebody.
Hi, this is Shar from Lamberton in southwest Minnesota.
Hi, Shar.
And as I try and get data from this, I'm kind of having problems envisioning if I will be doing this for my community of Lamberton, and then someone will be doing this in Big Stone County, and somebody will be doing this in Laverne, from all of our delegates. Or are you envisioning sort of a rural, regional community meeting?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, how do you envision the meetings, the spots that the meetings are at? How do you envision that happening in the metro area and the rural area and the suburban area? Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
I'll take
Let me. You want to take it? Okay. Go ahead.
Hey, Shar, it's Brent. So our original intent was to have representation from every Senate district. That was the concept initially. We started to realize that the world isn't that cut and dry in 67 sections. So, with that being said,
Ideal,
yeah, it's ideal.
but
It makes it
not
nice and
realistic.
neat. But what we have started to work on is create that your community, as you have, your group, and there's actually Leon's from here from Wilmer, and that crew over there, that you guys get the chance to create what that would be. We're going to try to create like a baseline regional approach, working with the Mado group is the concept right now, Jane.
Yeah, and I know Dawn is on the line there from Staples. We did start to realize that particularly as Sarah was putting out the call for hosts that, some people are going to say, "Yep, I'm there," and other people are like, "I don't know what I'm doing," and so we do want to have at least one of these meetings in every one of the Regional Development Commission regions. Now that leaves out Southeast, but you've got others,
Got other
right?
Other
And St. Cloud and places where the RDCs aren't there. But we do want to try to have at least one in each of the regions of the state, and then we would. That was one of the things we're trying to ask you about, Don. Actually, is if we could call on you and your colleagues to help us find locations in each of those regions, And we would try to help set those up and then find hosts, so that in every region of the state there would be somebody. Now, if anybody around this table or on the phone is willing to help us do that, that would be awesome. Otherwise, you know, we may end up going out there and conducting a meeting, which is fine. I want to jump in, but we're also very aware that these are locally hosted and need to have that local hosting, and not somebody coming from St. Paul saying, "I'm here to help you." So,
Okay.
yeah. So Shar, you're still there?
Yeah, that does help. I like the RSVP way of thinking, although it covers a huge area in Southwest.
Yeah, it is problematic, and we thought if we at least had some base meetings like that others who are, you know, hosting individually could fill in some of the blanks. We're not going to get the whole state covered. We know that. We also know that there are people around this table that are conducting meetings even in the same time, and so we're just going to try to keep track with whatever people are hearing out there about whatever they're hearing.
Okay.
So,
And
You know, it might be helpful, if you're thinking that way, it might be helpful just to, you know, shoot us an email that tells us which RSVP district we're in.
okay, yeah, and you're talking about the regional sustainable development districts. Yep, okay.
RSDP
Yeah.
Versus regional development organization, but yeah.
we'll get it straight and wait
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
Regional development district.
Yep. No, we'll have the bait.
So that would be known that as a region, you know, we'd know who we were gonna work together with.
Yep.
Yep.
Meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I think both the RDOs and the RSDPs and others, other acronyms, we can call upon it. We got a couple people around the table who represent those acronyms.
And Shar, to take the metro conversation, I know that was the kind of second part to that, is that we are working with various organizations in the area. So again, we use the example of Gail, and that she will be bringing the constituency group together. We have friends, Steve LeBeau, who will be doing one for Synapse, et cetera, that will lean on partners that we have been talking with on the Greater Minnesota Council of Churches. Hopefully, you know, we can start tying in with some cities. What we are doing right now is just touching base with our friends to say, here is the plan, here's the template, what side do you want to play? And then we'll play a little traffic cop as well, just to play connect the dots, to ensure that everybody's on the same page. And, you know, what we're not going to do is kind of like try to overprescribe it, because then we would get locked into some very bad relationships at that point. And quite honestly, let's not make it that hard.
Yeah, and one thing,
Okay, you can put me down to Western Minnesota.
Sweet.
Awesome.
great.
Leon, just go ahead and connect with her there.
And one thing, for those who are delegates in the room and on the phone, I know when you applied, there was a question about would you be willing to host a meeting? So while we do have sort of these base meetings, there also will be, you know, it'll be like we have our cores, but then we'll have other ones based off of the different locations of
delegates who wanna
delegates,
host,
and
yeah.
there might also be people who weren't delegates or weren't at the June meeting that are interested in to join the process, and they might decide that they want to host a meeting. But we will have those core sort of regions.
Okay, this is Darlene from Litchfield.
Hi, Darlene.
I would be interested in helping host.
Sweet.
And I've already had some initial contact with our Regional Development Commission.
Sweet.
So
Awesome.
if you could put me in contact with the person from Wilmer or anybody else in our region, there's a Region 60 and a Region 6W.
Yep.
So
Cool.
happy to work together.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
And that's the spirit right there. It's literally everybody jumping in, saying exactly what we want to do. We're trying to keep it as simple as possible. Again, as we see the 2.5 hours, doesn't have to be 2.5 hours. And we're thinking about other fun little things that we can add into it. But again, as long as we're hitting the 3 points, that is our objective for this meeting. And it's not a again, it's not also ran, it's a continuation of the whole process. That this is just this is going to be part of the blueprint. This is the blueprint, so.
Yep. Yep.
Somebody else was trying to come in on the phone there. Go ahead. Maybe. One thing that you said, Brett, reminded me that there are two other things that we really want to get across in these meetings. One is voter registration and the census. And so that will be part of the template there to just help everybody do that consistently too. And we'll have some one-pagers from the folks that are working on all these things. And I think somebody was on the phone from the League of Women Voters, is that right? And so they have graciously said that they will help us, wherever you're hosting, if there's a local league member there, they would be a person who would come to that meeting and just help with voter registration. So
They would contact you to that person if they're available.
Yeah.
But
Actually registering people there to vote?
or just answering questions, but if they're not registered and they want to be registered, yeah.
And Nick, you're on the phone, correct?
Maybe he left.
Oh, okay. Well, Nick Harper from League of Women Voters, he was on the phone, but so they're kind of working with us on trying to help provide that support for hosts, because it's very difficult to facilitate a meeting and also be registering people to vote.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of moving forward, because right now we're at about 2 o'clock. One thing for those who are excited, want to host a community meeting, if you go to the Thriving by Design website and under the tab Community Meetings, just click there and there's a sign up. The entry point to becoming a host is sign up online.
Okay. Should we move on to if there aren't any other pressing questions, you can always, like Sarah said, reach out. We should probably move to the next section, is the blueprint convening, and I think Brett, at this point, given our timing, I'd love to see if there's any volunteers who'd like to help work on planning that.
Yes.
And it could be some of the same folks that help plan Granite Falls, Upper Sioux, but certainly different people too.
Yes.
So,
As they say, the doors
and
of the place is open to participate in that process, to help us plan for the convention/convening that'll take place in mid-November, again, working with the dates, but most likely Friday, November 16th. It will be the day, now that will be the I won't call it culminating day, but definitely a major point for us to
it's a milestone.
yeah, to ratify the document at that point, so it's available to be shared with the new governor, new legislature, and local partners. So that's a very important event. We do not have a location yet, just FYI. And again, setting up the format on how we actually ratify all these pieces and everything else will be a part of that planning process. So, again, we are opening the doors to those who would like to participate on that committee. And we will have planning meetings over the next several, I'm just going to say weeks, just to kind of, bless you, just to kind of point out that we're not that far away from November. We'll entertain anybody who wants to jump in, unless anybody has any more questions about their.
And again, with those who are delegates here and on the phone, that was one thing that the plan is to have the delegates who came in June to also come to the November convening if they're able to.
Plus new ones that come from the community meetings. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and in some earlier conversations, we've talked about the idea of potentially doing video conferencing or Zoom or something that would unite a couple different locations. And I was just reading something that everybody likes to use Zoom now, and video conferencing is passé, but I put the first video conferencing sites in Minnesota, so we're going to use them. Okay. No. So we're still trying to figure out how we can strike the balance, knowing we can't, please everyone, but to have both a physical location where people can literally see people face to face, but then also have some satellite spots. Brett and I have been, talking to St. Paul Neighborhood Network and eyeing their lovely studio, and then talking to Les Heen, in Granite Falls, and saying, hey, maybe we could do something with the Pioneer Television, and so there's all sorts of possibilities still, and we haven't landed yet, but that's why we're asking for some advice.
Yeah, yeah.
and
So the
experience.
goal of having small groups out there signing in versus an individual sitting at their desk.
Correct.
Could be, right, because then it's better conversation, I think, in terms of trying to come to some consensus.
But
Yeah.
that's what the committee would be, get a
That's-
chance to tackle.
Yep.
As we don't want, again, this is democracy at work, group work, etc. We need your guidance and support in order to make it happen. So, don't let everybody talk at once to join that little group. But I will.
Question, is it a confirmed November 16th, or is it a highly likely, or is it open for discussion?
I don't think it's confirmed yet, but we've been putting it down as a tentative date.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know there's something else happening on November 16th that gave me pause, and I can't remember what it is, but
That's just my first thought was, it's the Friday before Thanksgiving week.
right, yeah,
I know there's people
who
they're
leave
out of
for that
town.
week,
They're-
yeah,
they're-
yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
And just to give everybody a heads up about why that is the week, it's the week after the election, but as we get into Thanksgiving, you guys, y'all know how it works from that point on. Thanksgiving rolls right into the rest of the holiday season. Now all of a sudden you're going straight into, it's almost a dead period all the way until Martin Luther King. Just cut to the chase. As we're trying to find people and try to get things done. So, not saying that it's kind of time certain, but that week is going to be pretty much,
I would agree that week is a good weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had originally had thought, maybe early December, but then we were trying to move it, because then we won't have time to get things ready for the legislature, so, yeah.
So,
It was the S words.
Yeah.
When I'm taking you to the weeks in terms of logistics, Southwest Minnesota Initiative Foundation is sponsoring a summit on the 15th.
Okay.
And that brings about 600 people from Southwest who will be dealing with similar issues.
Issues from a regional
Right.
basis,
So
yeah, yeah.
it might be helpful to think moving it out of Southwest Minnesota.
Mhm.
Because there will be a low attendance, I'm assuming.
Gotcha, yeah, because so many people are gonna be,
They
the,
can go out.
yeah, the comment here was that in southwestern Minnesota on the 15th of November, there's a huge summit being pulled together by the Southwest Initiative Foundation that about 600 people come to, so maybe not having it in Southwest would be one idea, but, yeah, so. Other things that people know about are happening that week. I'm always the one stuck in the office the day before Thanksgiving, so we could have it the day before Thanksgiving. Because it's really quiet and people actually answer their phone. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Bart, you're gonna say something? Or was that?
I just had a question.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So,
Any other conflicts or?
conflicts, comments, ideas?
Okay.
How about this? We're going to send out a notice to everybody saying we're going to have a committee meeting. Please join as best as possible. But we have to move forward on this pretty quickly. And we're not going to saddle you with too many meetings. It will be more of a, let's get everybody together, put some thoughts on the table. We'll execute from there. But we do need your support in order to make it happen. Because there's other committees that will need policy research and other activities that we'll need as well. And think outside yourself. If there are some people that are not around this table that you know the routine. If they ain't at the meeting, they normally get volunteered. So go ahead and volunteer them too. But the reality is that this has to be of the body and not of the organizations.
Yeah.
All right. Not to belabor, but moving on.
And moving on, yeah. So this is Jane again, and as was discussed, we are sort of at the beginning entry points, and we've been trying to talk about this as a multi-year effort, particularly across the next biennium, but across the next 2 bienniums of the legislative session, because that would be the administration of whichever governor we are going to get coming up here. And beyond that, what was discussed too, that we really are trying to build towards not only a policy agenda, but either renewal or a new social contract that is based on equity and inclusion and diversity as the model of strength for growth, particularly sustainable growth in Minnesota. So in terms of trying to stay connected and engaged, we want to keep nurturing the network that has been started through the delegate network. We are also trying to make some inroads into networks that are already existing, and one of which, for example, the Itasca Project or the Red Group. Some of us attend the Red Group. And organizations and institutions that can, if they work together, move some pretty significant mountains. So that's one of the things that if we can organize the grassroots, we can also organize the grass tops, and then let's meet in the middle and really make some things happen for Minnesota as we face this oncoming need for talent and people. We need people to keep our state strong and vital. And so 2019 and 2020 and beyond, I've done community development for 35 years now, and every time I go through these things, I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm doing it for the first time. And I think this is one of those significant moments in our state's history where, as we heard from Susan Brower, that this change is here. We gotta move people, and those of us who've been around a bit longer have heard 20, 30 years ago that this was coming. And so now is our time to really act on it, and I've taken great inspiration from for example, the Policy Link report on Minnesota's Tomorrow, and equity being the strength for the economy. The Itasca Project, for example, is working on a lot of effort in talent attraction and retention, particularly people from different cultures, people of color. And Kevin, you may know more about this than others, because Itasca has been working on this since at least 2015 as one of their major projects. Brett and I just had a chance to visit with Deshaun Drew yesterday from the Bush Foundation, and he's really active in that project and in the Itasca group as a whole. And so as folks around this table and on the phone and all of our networks, I mean, one of the things that we'd like to do next actually is map our networks. And that was something that I really wanted to do at the conference, but we just didn't have time and we didn't have the funding. And I'm going to look at Marianne over here because I know you guys, your colleague Scott Chasden and others do that for various networks, and we'd like to tap your resources, your talents to try to do that. Yeah, Kevin, go ahead. And you want to pass this down to Kevin Lindsay is here, our Commissioner of Human Rights for the state.
I love the fact that it takes about 3 minutes just to pass.
It's the talking stick, you're right. Yeah.
So this morning, the governor presented at the Employee Resource Group Initiative. So there was the Best Buy, General Mills, 3M, U.S. Bank, missing 2 or 3 other large players. The governor presented, the CEO of 3M presented, and the art, if you want to try and map out, is that when the governor was in North Minneapolis in 2011, he spoke to the community there. That meeting became the impetus give you that because I think if you just had 3 or 4 entities, players, talk about what has happened in the last 6 to 7 years, that probably would be helpful from a mapping perspective of what's going on, and it also empowers, I think, some folks from listening to the story that they're actually able to do something in a relatively short period of time. I'm not saying 7 or 8 years is sort of quick, but yet at the same time, a lot has actually occurred, and I'm not sure everybody's aware of all of it. Duchesne was there, and he was talking about Marnita's table and various efforts. That would be something that I think, not from the state level, but cities and counties have been using Marnita's table, and that might be a very interesting storytelling exercise of what has happened in the last 7, 8 years, using that as a vehicle to drive economic development and inclusion.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I had a chance to go to the Marnina's table yesterday. People have heard of this, and if you go to marninastable.org, you can learn more about it. But it's based on food and neighbors, basically. Neighbors from around, not just your own neighborhood, but intergenerational and multicultural, and just getting around the table and talking together with some guided questions and trying to build that social fabric really up to be more welcoming in all of our communities as newcomers come and as more diversity is taking hold. So yeah, I think it's a great model, and in fact, they are looking for rural hosts. So people in Greater Minnesota, they're looking for people to get trained, and the training is about 3 hours long. And I kept thinking as I was there last night, oh, I can ask some blueprint questions. No, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. But it was the same kind of idea of just getting your friends and neighbors around, but that meaning, all of us Minnesotans, not just people from your own little enclave. So that's great. Thank you so much, Kevin, for letting us know what's happening there at the Grass Tops.
So what we have in the remaining 15 minutes of the scheduled meeting is making sure that we're keeping the momentum going. This, first and foremost, thank you again. This is a great turnout. Friday afternoon.
Talk about the research a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That this is a great turnout to get things re-energized, really recommitted. Again, cannot stress enough, if you go back to the template, going to the back of the page, and kind of getting the proposed schedule that Sarah has laid out for us. And again, as you start to see things are starting to ramp up now, we are in the midst of signing hosts up. Do not hesitate. Be creative about your community. Again, Steve LeBeau and Gail and others have started to pull groups together, concepting what that looks like. What we are encouraging to be intentional, to reach out to groups that you normally don't work with as well. Just FYI, as we're trying to make sure that it looks like Minnesota of 2040 and not of 1940. Just want to go that route.
1970.
Just want to go that route. But the reality is that we're in the middle of action right now. So moving forward from there. Mid-September, that will be intense trainings and everything else. We might get a note prior to that once Sarah Jane and I figure out exactly how we can do the modeling of the event itself. I mean, the actual local meetings themselves, and start to have some fun with that. And the full week of September 10th, or the 10th through the 15th, there will be daily trainings. That some will be recorded, some will be just us, one of us, most likely. I think I was raising my hand on that one, so I will be on the phone live at least an hour every day, ready to go. And any questions that need to be asked, I'm there for you. So the reality is that as you see that that's not that far away, it's time to build it up and let the people kind of know what's going on. This sets us up for as we build up these great pockets of activities with the local organizing networks, and their efforts at the local effort, but also as we continue to push at the state legislature. And again, I have no clue what it's going to look like. Nobody has a clue on what the next legislature and the governor is going to look like. So we're going to be prepared one way or another to present, but we are presenting and we are pushing our thoughts that have come from Minnesotans from all walks of life. And so we will we will develop the plan as a collective, and also the timing of how we roll those things out as well. The last thing that I will add, before we can start getting into the research piece and everything else, is that the spirit of this whole thing is based on what Minnesotans want to see going forward. So one of the reasons why we do the asset assessment and everything else is understanding where we're at. But this is the aspirational piece, to actually pull Minnesota forward as opposed to what normally takes place, trying to create practical ideas, because we've seen the results of it over the past couple, and outside of the governor playing goalie, literally and figuratively, in his last cycle, there hasn't been much movement forward in order to really create the Minnesota that we need to take place. So we're leaning in as a collective in order to kind of break the logjam as to the best of our ability, to show some new ideas, to show where everybody around the table, regardless of, and Joel, you say this brilliantly, kill the left-right paradigm as best as possible. Mm-hmm. That it's just about forward and about Minnesota and how we have to be able to answer the questions. I still look at the whole thing of 2020 is coming around the corner, and people keep saying that we need 100,000 new workers. I was like, oh, that's just 18 months away. I have not heard that intensive push yet. So we're on the clock, and we're going to push forward very hard, and we thank you again for what you've been doing in order to make it happen. Gail.
Just a quick comment on, as we think about pulling together a community group to host a meeting. I'm thinking for myself, I was thinking of focusing in on education since that's my area of expertise. But it would be helpful to have some general sense of what an invitation might look like to bring people together. Yeah. And I know you can word it a lot better than I can, because you live and breathe this, and just to have the right tone and everything.
Yeah. So we can give invitation and language and things like that for people to use if they would like to. So if that's something that would be helpful for everyone, we can do that. But we also want to leave the opportunity there. You don't have to use it. If you have, if you want to just invite your buddies however you see best, that's fine too. So.
Yeah, and I think, Dee, you pointed out too that it might help to have a template of all of these pieces, and that's what
people realize they're working on something.
We're working on it together, right?
Yeah.
So there's consistency through the message, and that's why we put the sign up there, because hey, you guys recognize it. Kevin's gonna walk.
It's still going to take 3 minutes either way.
So you had mentioned equity, the superior growth model. Okay, so that's been branded, that's been out there. So is that something where you want to take when that idea was presented to the Twin Cities, and then talk about what has happened in the Twin Cities, and then expanding it to the entire state?
Right. Yeah.
Because for some folks that would be not a new kind of phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yep.
And I think that also gets to the point, we've not just started this from Granite Falls.
Yeah.
People have been working to try and
2011.
expand that concept in 2012, 13 through the entire state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's, we continue to we thought we were pretty well informed, but we keep discovering groups and initiatives, and everybody's working on one aspect or another of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and so if there are, this is why the mapping I think is really important, not only mapping people's contacts, but just sort of the network of organizations that are trying to do something. So that's part of the moving forward as well, particularly as a new administration comes in, and that's partly why the Red Group came together for the first time, was to just give Governor Pawlenty a white paper on what's happening in rural Minnesota. and 18 years later, or however long it's been, here we are again. So let me just talk really quickly about what Kate Searles is working on. She is trying to integrate what was pulled out of the Granite Falls meeting and what came out of the survey, and the sheet that you have here that says summary of integrated findings from the first Thriving by Design event is a fairly quick and dirty summary of the top kinds of both issues and also assessments, if you will, of that gathering. And it was really strongly said, and I can't say strong enough, that people just really liked being together, that they liked making the connections, and particularly they liked making connections with people that they might not have made connections to otherwise, people from different communities or different ethnic backgrounds or different ages, and people working on different issues too, which was part of the point, was to try to get some cross-fertilization between issues that tend to get siloed. And there were obviously, some pushback about there was too much. You threw too much down our throats, a lot of download, not enough time for talking with each other, which I feel like we're doing now again, but sorry. And what she did was put, as you've seen on the back here, the infographic that shows by sort of size of square or rectangle how the issues did sort of fall, and I just want to say too that the folks that were there in the open space session who stood up and said, I will talk about this. I will talk about this issue. Like Marianne, you were there talking about the rural-urban kind of exchange and dynamics, and other people stood up and talked about, Lewis, you were there about criminal justice reform and police brutality and such. And so we are trying to make sure that, for sure, you all who were kind of leading that moment are a part of the conversation going forward. And so you should have gotten an email from me and probably from Kate just saying, here's where we're at kind of with that. Some people did make contacts already with the folks that were in their small groups. We are also trying to assemble people who are willing to be contributors to each of the topic areas, if you will, the elements of the blueprint as it stands now. And I've talked to a few of you that are around the table, like I know Kim, if you're still on the phone, Kimberly from Bemidji, I know you had stood up about entrepreneurship and kind of the new economy and new economic development kinds of models, and so we're trying to tap people that want to be on Kate's research team, if you will, and at various levels of engagement. If you want to write stuff, if you want to contribute research that you've done or that you know about, or you just want to be an editor of what's put together, because the idea is that we take what was put out there in Granite Falls and Upper Sioux community, added it to the survey. Now we're going to get even more information from these community meetings. Kate's going to take that as data and plugging that into this same kind of big data base, and then we'll try to provide some backgrounding of each issue. And so for those of you, and I'm looking at Anna because I know you've worked this way as well, if you've got some kind of policy issue, you want to show some research behind it, and you want to show what's already happened, as you mentioned, Kevin, too, and what's worked and what hasn't, and what the pros and cons are of different kinds of next steps, for example. And so we're going to try to do that with the blueprint of trying to, we'll have a list of right now we have about 13, I think, areas, but we've also been advised to just pick a couple things that are really critical right now. And then knowing that we're gonna be working on this for a couple years down the road, we've got that sort of roadmap, but and you can see from Kate's graphic here that diversity, inclusion, equity, and anti-racism efforts themselves are an issue, but they also, as Kate has reminded us, what we want to be weaving through all of the issues too. So, and then education, popped up as big, and economic and community development. And so obviously those folks have been working for a long time at the legislature, at policy development. These are things that come up a lot, but what we're listening for are the ideas that are bubbling up from around the state, in childcare, for example, what Southwest Initiative Foundation and others are doing, linking that very strongly to economic development and housing and transportation. And so I just put that out there to say, if any one of you on the phone or here that haven't been tapped and want to be for more of the research committee, which will be really fun, and I say that with all sincerity because I really like that. So the policy wonks in you and the pracademics, people who actually are out there doing things as well as studying things, we'd love to have you. And so for our final note here, we've got some sign-up sheets. And for those of you who are on the phone, if you just want to email me or Kate, if she's already contacted you, to be on a committee with her that's going to be taking what comes in and what's already been coming in and fashioning it into a living, breathing blueprint for equity.
Yep. So I just have a really common sign-up sheet here. If there's something that you know for sure out of some of these topics or something specific that you'd like to contribute some research to, feel free to sign up here. There's also a section here asking if you'd like to be a community host. So if you say yes, then we'll just follow up with you on that. But I can really quick show you, while that's going around, how to sign up to be a host. Let's see. So basically you'll go to the Thriving by Design website. And if anyone would like to do this on their phones while they're here, they're more than welcome to. And then literally right there with kind of all the information. So you just have your contact, and then also we are asking, let's see. So we kind of have the calendar here as well, so you can see, okay, this is when the trainings are, community meetings. We're asking, what day possibly could you do a training, just so Brett can prepare, or we can prepare, like how many people, which days. And then if you have a date in mind for the actual meeting itself, that would be great to know. If you don't, it's okay, but, and then also if there's a location that you think could work, feel free to propose that. And then there's questions about, do you need assistance with recruiting people? And then also access to technology, which if you don't have access to technology, it's not the end of the world, it's fine. But it's just good to know. And also we have on here, so one of the things that people talked about is wanting to have, know the network of people who were at the June gathering. And so what we did, and we've sent out a few emails, is we created a sign-up form for that, just because when people initially signed up to go to the meeting, it was a few months ago, and we weren't saying that we were going to be sharing that information. So out of respect to sort of everyone that was there, if you sign up for the Thriving by Design network, that will be, then you'll be able to see everyone's information on the network. So if you haven't done that yet, I can definitely direct you where to go for that. And then last but not least, kind of what other ways would you be interested in helping or participating beyond the community meeting, so.
Any questions on what we have?
About the community meetings, just quick, I would assume reimbursement or people's mileage or barrier reduction funds or coffee, whatever, that's really out of our own pockets at this point, or our organization pockets?
At this point, yes, we are trying to get some more funding for both community meetings and the November gathering
gotcha.
too, so, yeah. Yeah.
Also, I don't know how many people have had a chance to look at the website, but for right now, we do have this section here. Some of the things that were discussed at the June gathering and beyond, we do have some tools and different articles here, so it might be helpful to take a look at some of these.
What was that under publications?
It is under, if you go to the One Minnesota Equity Blueprint, right under resources there. And if you have any resources that you'd like to suggest that we add, we definitely can do that. And I'm working on trying to make it where it's not just a list where you can do some categorization and sorting, but for right now, this is what we have. But, and if you would like to join the network, you just go to the home page, right underneath Jane and Brett's awesome video there.
Our silent video.
There's a button here, basically I want to join, and you click that, and it will bring you right to the sign up, so.
And speaking of videos, when you do host a community meeting, we may be, we're gonna try to send out a film crew. And so if you're willing to have somebody come in and do a little filming and maybe gather some stories from people that are at your meeting, let us know that if that's going to be okay. We won't just send a crew out and say, hey, we're here. So, yeah. Any
Great.
other things?
How's everyone feeling? What's the
Yeah,
tone of the room, and how are people excited? Are people confused, or? Good? Good, all right. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And stick around if you want to keep chatting.
Yeah.
We have this room for a little bit, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Marianne, can you stick around?
Yeah.
Because I want to ask you about that network thing.
So I'll probably see you at 7 o'clock. I'm sure.
Oh,